Perhaps you never read a Discworld novel before. First of all, I'm so sorry. And if so, you might wonder, why do people enjoy this floating space turtle? What's so special about it? Oh, I get it. It's a wacky world. But I don't even read comedy. I like the serious stuff. Look, I'm here today representing all Discworld fans. And whoever disagrees, meet me in the shades. Bring your worst sock and your best half brick. And the first thing I gotta say is that I know. Terry Pratchett books are often described as fantasy comedy or fantasy parody, and while that's not wrong, it misses something essential. Ask a Discworld fan for a favorite quote, and you'll often hear something closer to a line of poetry than a cartoon gag. And hey, try asking those same fans if they'd read a Pratchett-written drama or a horror, and you get waves of enthusiastic yeses, with the eventual, "Oh, I'm not so sure. You see, I've devolved back into illiteracy in the early 2000s. Is there an audiobook version available?" My point is, most people would say yes, but why? If Pratchett books are supposed to make you laugh, why would you read one that's not even trying to do so? What if those stories are trying to go beyond humor? What if those stories are only using humor as a path so they can get to the really important, the really precious stuff? Well, let's get back to Great Artuin for a second. Galactic Turtle, the piece of cosmology that introduces so many of the Discworld books, such as Watch. This is space. It's sometimes called the final frontier. Except that, of course, you can't have a final frontier, because there'd be nothing for it to be a frontier too. But as frontiers go, it's pretty penultimate. And against the wash of stars, a nebula hangs, vast and black, one red giant gleaming like the madness of gods. And then the gleam is seen as the glint in a giant eye, and it's eclipsed by the blink of an eyelid, and the darkness moves a flipper, and Great Artuin, Star Turtle, swims onward through the void. On its back, 4 giant elephants. On their shoulders, rimmed with water, glittering under its tiny orbiting sunlet, spinning majestically around the mountains at its frozen hub, lies the Discworld, world and mirror of worlds. Nearly unreal. Reality is not digital, an on-off state, but analog, something gradual. In other words, reality is a quality that things possess in the same way that they possess, say, weight. Some people are more real than others. For example, it has been estimated that there are only about 500 real people on any given planet, which is why they keep unexpectedly running into one another all the time. The Discworld is as unreal as it is possible to be, while still being just real enough to exist, and just real enough to be in real trouble. There's nothing particularly funny here, right? You could call this good humor, I guess, but I think nobody would call it hysterical. Still, this one and other passages like it were chosen to open the gates of their respective stories. What are they trying to evoke then? I'll tell you what, something rarer, more elusive than humor. Something that few authors dare to pursue. You see, the turtle is bringing us to... Charm is one of those things that are hard to describe, but easy to experience. In fact, even attempting to describe it does it a disservice. Reading this feels too clinical, like dissecting a frog instead of listening to the ribbit. There's a reason why you choose this word rather than appeal or allurement. Charm has its own qualia, it feels different. The turtle serves as a herald, introducing all the charm you're about to read. I'm of the school of thought that any art form, writing included, is meant to evoke emotional states. Ideas and concepts too, sure, but primarily emotions. And it feels to me that some emotional states are harder than others. For example, I think making the reader angry or excited is rather easy when compared to evoking nostalgia or revelation. In that scale, making them feel charmed is particularly difficult. Pratchett's narrative decision to start so many of his novels with that bit that's irrelevant to the plot, but that's there to bring you to this very particular emotional state, contradicts most modern writing advice. Have a look at how he introduces the disc in Equal Rights. Here it comes now. Watch closely, the special effects are quite expensive. A bass note sounds. It is a deep, vibrating chords that hints that the brass section may break in at any moment with a fanfare for the cosmos. Because the scene is the blackness of deep space, with a few stars glittering like the dandruff on the shoulders of God. Then it comes into view overhead, bigger than the biggest, most unpleasantly armed star cruiser in the imagination of a three-ring filmmaker. A turtle, 10,000 miles long. It is Great Artuin, one of the rare astrochelonians from a universe where things are less as they are and more like people imagine them to be. And it carries on its meteor-pocked shell 4 giant elephants who bear on their enormous shoulders the great round wheel of the Discworld. See this? This is charm, and evoking it is the absolute top priority here. Nobody would argue that, watch closely, the special effects are quite expensive, followed by an orchestra metaphor, moves any plot forward. But it does move me. It moves my heart. It deftly pulls the corners of my mouth into a grin. A grin that's the natural state I'm supposed to have for the entirety of the story. Poetics, folks, the thing I keep talking about in this channel. Elegant, vibrant poetics. Poetics that take me from my little brain and transport me to somebody else's mind, even if just for a moment. But charm is still difficult to convey. Terry uses his introductions to tell us about his wacky world with strange rules, sure, but also as a space for us to see how he writes, his style. Most of the charm is not in the Discworld's setting, but in the writing itself. So much so that it transfers to other Pratchett books in other settings. Go read Nations, brilliant. This charm is expressed in a combination of whats and hows. In the colorful world he's talking about, of course, but also in how he chooses to write about it. Listen, you might say, if all this man needed to do to create this charm, as you say, was to write something interesting in his special style, then why not write about the characters anyway? You know, like normal writers do. Before we get back to the disc, let's talk about building an atmosphere, something writers need to do over and over again in every story. Think of it that way. Many writers like myself imagine their stories first as a sort of movie inside their heads, and the craft of writing is to translate that mental image onto the page in an enticing way. But when I visualize a scene, I see everything. It's a full-on high-quality image with 1,000 details. So writing is not only describing the image, but choosing where to focus your attention. Am I going to represent the bathhouse by describing its hand-painted flowers, its wooden beams, the gold sheets and its sliding doors? Describing everything would take pages and pages. So one must pick. As you select the details, you quickly realize that choosing one element over the other changes how the place feels to the reader. You're not only providing enough imagery so people can imagine the place, but you're also building the emotional undertones for that location. You're setting up the chairs and the tables, but you're also doing more than that. You're pointing at how the reader should react to them. An atmosphere is, so, a combination of geographical description and emotional vibe. A faint morning fog was coming over the cliffside. It crept in pale and slow, like lichen consuming a dead tree. Out of the mist rose Hyreth Manor, grey and black and green, as if it were an extension of the cliffs themselves. Yanto led them up a stone staircase, the steps uneven and carpeted in moss. The wooden double doors were damp and mouldering, Effie could smell the rot before she even reached the threshold. The brass door knocker was huge as a bull ring and flaking with rust. The hunter had to jam his shoulder against the door several times to force it open, until at last the ancient hinges had relented with a dismal and ominous groaning sound. "Welcome," the hunter said. "Try not to slip." This is a passage from Ava Reed's A Study in Drowning, when the characters reach a brand new location. This description will then help us imagine everything that happens inside that manor for the rest of the story. Inserting careful atmospheres into our narratives is nothing crazy. It's writing mimicking the human brain. When we enter a space, sure, we get a collected idea of the objects and shapes and colors we see there, but immediately after that, they make us react emotionally. This living space feels cozy, this office feels dull, this city feels majestic. Okay, but why am I talking about this? This is just some writing basics, right? Yes, but how we think about atmosphere has been changing over the years. Writing evolves, tastes and styles are not constant. Modern fantasy has been more and more character focused, and that's not a bad thing, it's a stylistic choice. Nowadays, fantasy novels tend to start with action and establish characters as quickly as possible. Who are they? How do they navigate the world? What pushes them forward? Later on, the world can be established. The reader can learn about its mysteries and wonders little by little. But things were not always like this. Readers used to have different expectations, different levels of patience even. Think of that same atmosphere logic, but applied to a whole book, or even a series. Starting with long prologues depicting an intricate world, or the passing of the seasons in the forest, or a detailed explanation of the castle's rules, was not a mistake. It was a common preference at the time. Many readers liked it. For example, I'm a huge fan of Ursula Le Guin's Earthsea trilogy. But for today's standards, her introduction is painfully slow. It's worth it though, you should go read it. Terry Pratchett, unbound by today's standards, also operated under this logic. Perhaps influenced by Tolkien's Silmarillion, where he introduced his world's creation myth, the broadest possible approach to world building, and that was released less than a decade before the first Discworld book. No need for characters here. In fact, the characters can't see what you're seeing. In the same way, you can't see the country or the planet you're on right now. This is between you and the world. Or even more abstractly, between the reader and this charming lens with which they should read the book. And as much as I understand that things are different now, that audiences have shifted their preferences and they want to care about characters and their motivations as quickly as possible, nothing wrong with that. I must say, I care about this. I care about great Artuin. I want to read about it. I want to know more. The introductions, as irrelevant to the plot as they might be, are always there to remind me how to interact with the plot. And they play me like a fiddle. Introducing the main conflict, introducing character motivations, they're all essential to the story, of course. But Terry thinks they can wait a few pages. And I think there's also nothing wrong with that. When was the last time you opened a novel and you thought to yourself, wow, that's a charming place to spend the evening? Hi, my name is Jorian. I'm a Brazilian fantasy writer, and this channel here is my art exploration. I want to understand what makes the heart of those stories so compelling. Why are they so different, so special? And I'm taking you with me. Come quickly now. If you're a Discworld fan, please do me a favor and leave your favorite quote in the comments below. And if you're not a Discworld fan yet, have a look at the comments and you'll see the beauty, the diversity, the absolutely brilliant ideas this man puts into paper. And if you enjoyed this video here, you might enjoy this older video of mine where I read over 45 scenes with the luggage to try to understand why is it so beloved? Why is it so special? It's a chest, for crying out loud. A special thank you to my patrons. Thank you so much for giving me the hope that one day I might do this professionally. And if you want to support me, the link will be below. See you folks next time.